that we are getting a lower product overall because they're able to leverage their buying power when they come to the table.
So what makes you believe that?
Well, we've got to have this partnership for many, many years. We know that it's a highly competitive industry in terms of food service. They have to negotiate on a year-to-year basis in terms of their rates. We know that we've got some structure to what they can make and can't make. And so there is every day they perform. And so we are able to see whether we are getting good value. We listen to our students in terms of, are they delivering what they've promised? And we take all of those things into consideration. And based on that, we have determined that we believe we've got a good value.
So just pausing on the cost component for a moment, how do you make a judgment that on a cost basis you receive good value?
Well, I think I would just go back to I would never look at this contract in my role as the director that narrowly. I would look at the big picture on what it means to have this food service program for our campus. And there's risks that they take. I think about enrollment since I'm in housing and I have to have enough beds. If we set up rates and all of a sudden we're not going to have 300 students that we thought we were going to have, then food service, they have to figure out how to make that year go by with no increase.
How big a risk is that? They're going to get paid for their cost plus profit, though, aren't they?
Well, it's because it's based on what their sales are overall.
Right.
Okay, so if we have less meal plans, then their sales overall are going to be less.
They would make less money.
They would, absolutely, yeah.
Their risk is making less money.
Correct.
Okay. It's not whether they are going to lose money. They're not going to lose money. Or if they are, tell me how they could lose money under this contract.
If they couldn't cover their overhead expenses, because it's not just the profit, it's profit plus overhead expenses. So they've got so many people on staff, they have IT needs, they have HR needs, they have people housed, they have to run, they also do catering on campus, and on our campus, they do pay for some rent and some utilities in our retail operations. Mm-hmm. So they have to cover all of that.
And have the campus audited this contract at any point in time?
We have not done an audit. That is something that is available to us. We do, on a monthly basis, review all the financials.
And those are the numbers that they supply?
They supply directly to us.
Okay.
And then we...
With backup material.
Right, and we compare that to the information that we have on with the meal plan information in our housing office.
Do you anticipate? You have the right to audit the contract, I'm assuming. Mm-hmm. Do you anticipate a formal audit at any point in time?
We could certainly do that.
It's one way to get a fix on what's actually happening, other than monthly reports.
Yes.
Good practice, generally speaking. I think many of us in government believe to audit periodically.
I can't say I disagree.
3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years, yeah. Okay. And then, Mr. Neal, thank you, Ms. Glendon. Mr. Neal, let me ask you just a couple of questions, if I may. Your contract is also essentially a commission-based contract, if I understand it correctly. You did make well, let me just follow up with the same question I asked Mr. McManus. What is the restraint in your case, either contractual or otherwise, that prevents, I believe it's Aramark in your case?
Aramark.
From saying, we need to charge this price, and the campus does better with higher prices charged and paid?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. Number one, as explained early on about the region that we serve and the need to make sure that we're as cost effective as we can. But the second part of it is it does take our permission in order for a price to go forward. We do not utilize these funds in other parts of the university. So it's not like we are trying to supplement other parts of the university with these funds. They stay within the student services area. And the most important part of it as well, I think, is the competitiveness for around that. So if I would just say that our budgets are not dependent and built upon the commissions related from the food service. Are they helpful? Yes. And they enable us to provide other services for the students. But the purpose of us having a advisory committee is to look at these issues, to find out from, and to hear from students as to whether or not this is a concern. I would say one factor that why it's a little broader for us is we do have, not by choice, but by long story, but we have the fewest number of resident students, so the meal plans in terms of that. So we're really dealing with the campus community as a whole, who then do have options of going to other areas around the campus if in fact they choose not to do that and the prices are too high or the quality is too low or whatever those circumstances may be. So I would just say from a, can we, could we in fact try to inflate the prices along with with Aramark to get more money? Yeah, I think you would historically see that our budgets would not bear that out, and that's not a premise of where we are, and that's why we do put in the comment. We like to think that we're an advocate for the students, and that's why we say that the prices cannot be raised without mutual agreement.
So you have, in your view, the right to veto a pricing
Absolutely.
increase, and have you ever exercised that?
I don't know if veto is the right word, but we have certainly said that we would ask for, we would be looking and trying to weigh all the factors that I just brought in as to whether or not it would be warranted or not. And have we agreed to price increases? Yes. Have we always tried to assure ourselves that that it's reasonable and, again, in terms of what is around us and what the students can afford and that type of thing? Yes, we've done that as well. So I think it's a decision that brings in many factors, but I would say that we would have no qualms with going to a food service company and saying if we felt the increase was unwarranted to say the answer is no. And I think in the past we have done that. Is it in writing? No, because it's a conversation type thing is where it starts out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's actually part of the dichotomy here between the airport example and the example of at least the two campuses' contracts. The airport actually has a written contractual policy that caps what the price can be that a concessionaire can charge. Yours is by conversation, mutual agreement.
I think that's true,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that but I would just say that I think even as difficult as these economic times are in the state, and for certainly state universities. You will find that Bakersfield is not looking to food service to supplement the issues and concerns that are coming forward in terms of budget reductions.
In the conversations you have had, or your staff has had with Aramark, has there ever been discussion of off invoice rebates and how that might relate to their prices they seek to charge your student and campus community?
I think the biggest area that we would have known somewhat about is on beverages, and because our campus has a pouring rights contract as well, and so we are aware that beverages carry some of this kind of stuff. But to get into the detail of it, no. Is it enlightening for us? Absolutely. I think the CSU has taken the concern very seriously in terms of making sure that we're doing that. I think, on the other hand, I would just say we should all be careful that we don't require something that comes back. And I would say this from a small campus. In our recent RFP, we had 3 people look at us and give us competitive bids, and one of them reduced it because we didn't have a large enough resident population.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be careful that we look at this, but on the other hand, when it's a competitive bid type thing, we will look at the fact that they're weighing all those factors in terms of coming into play. Would I say that this is not of interest? No. I think that this process has been very enlightening for us, and I think it's certainly gives us opportunities to raise additional questions with our provider.
Speaking of your RFP, in your RFP, you invited prospective bidders to give you information about rebates and means by which they might be shared. If I recall your RFP, tell us what kind of response you got to that.
Well, the response we got from them was the fact that it was an evaluation of additional capital investment within the university as to how they would bring their resources, their combination of resources to bear. Did they come in specifically by saying we're making this much on rebates and we're doing this and we're doing that? The answer was no.
So,
but it was a response and is in their mind was reflected about the capital investments that they were prepared to make in terms of the university.
So, in a sense, as an alternative or an offset to discussing rebates, they said we will offer to invest in your campus facilities.
And I think the conversation was from a combination of their resources available to them, as opposed to specifically rebates by themselves.
Was there a dollar figure put on the investment?
Well, yes, it's written in our contract, and we weighed that versus what the competitor also was willing to put in, and one of the numbers were higher by what Aramark was willing to do versus Sodexo.
But they didn't offer up any information on what they were receiving in the way of rebates, so that you could say, "Gee, we'd rather have the benefit of the rebates than what you're offering us for the investment in the facilities."
No, it wasn't couched in that particular basis.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Garrick.
Thank you. In your handout, you identify financial commitment. Aramark paid $1,062,000 upon execution of the contract. Your point B says Aramark will pay CSUB, potentially another $1,591,000 over the 7-year, and Aramark point C will pay an additional $850,000 to exercise the last 3-year option. Where does that money go?
We'll go back into our facilities. The point B, as an example, is one of the factors that we've been struggling with and hope to be able to do is to build. Actually, our housing, in our opinion, is it's over 40 years old, and we would not want to continue it with our students, and so we're trying to build some new housing. And as a result of that, and it would be some additional housing. It would be, instead of 300 beds, we'd have about 500 beds to start with. And Aramark would assist us in terms of, and provide some of this money to renovate some of our facilities for that increased amount of dining that may occur as a result of increased resident population.
So, am I understanding that you plan on using the $1,591,000 to help build an additional approximately 200 units?
No, only for renovation of and expansion of the dining facilities.
You is spending that so that they can renovate, so that they can, or in this case,
they would.
You will.
They would provide the funds. Candidly, we also look to them in terms of because of the business that they're in, to advise us. We can take advice. We all know how that goes, but to advise us professionally as to how it may best fit the increased demand for resident dining on the campus. So that's how those dollars would be utilized.
How long has Aramark been a vendor at your facility?
About a year and a half.
And who did you have prior?
Sodexo.
And what persuaded you to go with Aramark over Sodexo?
Competitive bid.
And did the students see a savings in the cost of the food that was passed on in a competitive bid that one party or corporation left and a new corporation stepped in at a more competitive
I would
bid?
say not substantially. I'd have to go back and look at those numbers, to be honest with you. I can't say that, but there was not a dramatic change from one to the other.
Mr. Chairman, since we provided, and I assume it was provided by, this is assumption here, always careful on that, UC Irvine meal plan rates, can we ask that, because I'm looking at a 73% over a 6-year period. I mean, that's shocking as a student and to be faced with that. So can we ask that the UC Davis also provide that and that Bakersfield also provide over the same period? Or what?
We have the information for you. Excuse me. I believe we have the information for UC Davis, so we could supply that. I don't know if.
Like
yes, we could. I believe we could do that. I don't know if we have the information on your meal plan rates.
We're sending that in.
I don't remember seeing it, so maybe could we ask you if you could supply that?
Is this a since we have 23 CSUs and 9 or 10, however you want to count,
Right.
the UCs, why not see if they can't compile across the board what type of increase? Is one experiencing 73%, another one's only at 48%, and what is the difference? Is it the environment? That would be, I think, just helpful data.
Is that doable, Mr. Murphy?
We could certainly look into that. I would mention that in both cases of Irvine and Davis, those were the second to last and last UC campuses that, as I understand, that had yet to insource food service workers. So in both those cases, you kind of have a selective set of data with regard to what that price point looked like. I'd also note that of our 10 campuses overall, 4 of them have contracts with big vendors or big contractors like Airmarks or Sodexo's. The other 2 that, well, one was alluded to earlier today, UC San Francisco. The 4th is UC Irvine. In the case of, UC Riverside. In the case of San Francisco, that's a contract with Airmark for conference services and some daily cafeteria services. In the case of Riverside, their contract is with their extension facility or extension offices. And so what you've got here at the table today are the 2 campuses represent kind of this traditional standard undergraduate serving meal operations.
UCSF doesn't have a student meal plan.
No.
Exactly.
But-
exactly.
And they don't even have an undergraduate.
Right.
Right.
But the other campuses do, whether they are handling this internally or through a contract.
Right. So that actually was the purpose of my question is exactly what you would want us to compare in terms of campus to campus. If you're looking for how, for example, UC Davis and Irvine compare to other UC campuses that have in-house meal plans, I think we could certainly look into that.
I guess this chart, which I found
Right.
informative, and with any footnotes, that if you want to add a footnote, asterisk, however you like to describe it, that
Right.
there is, take into account that these 3 years brought the in-service employees for the UC Davis, and that $150 is for retail goods
Right.
per semester, I assume. It just would be interesting to get that for the 9 other campuses, I would think. And on the CSUs, I was wondering if it was possible. And do you have in-service, or all of your people now?
You're down to about 6 campuses that are contracting out, aren't you? Isn't that
100% contract out employees?
Well, contract out with a firm like Aramark or Sodexo for supply of food.
And the others,
Services.
They handle it in-house?
Self-operate.
Self-operate.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Thank you.
But I think what we're talking about are 2 basic pieces of information. One would be the student meal plan rates over the last 6 years.
Right.
That's what we did with we left out. We didn't go back further with Irvine because your rate structure changed. Even though we had some older data than that, and I appreciate that. And the increase on a percentage basis year to year in student meal plan rates.
Sure.
I think
Yeah.
those.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I would just note, given that we have Emily here from Davis, perhaps she can give a quick quantification of what those increased rates look like for UC Davis over these years.
I don't. Do you have that information?
Well, I think we provided it already.
You did provide it, and I just
Okay.
don't know if we've got it quickly at hand. That's on a percentage basis.
that's just total sales. That's the rate to the contract.
Oh, it was an attachment, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's-
Okay.
Right.
So it looks as though by the data we have from UC Davis over a 9-year period, commencing in 2002-3, and you have different meal plans, the increases range from 61% to 92%.
No.
Those are the over 10-year period.
Oh.
But
okay.
yeah, that's over.
Okay,
That's over.
Okay. Okay.
That's from 2002-3 to 11-12.
Yeah.
So it's a longer period of time than we have prepared on the chart here. I don't have a calculation on a shorter time period.
Thank you for that, but I think just to compare apples to apples would be best if we...
Yeah. So we can do that for UC Davis with the information you've provided us, and then we would need it for the other 7,
Yeah.
excluding UCSF.
Mr. Chair, I would note that I, in fact, for my own purposes, ran those same year-over-year numbers just as a FYI. My figures track exactly with yours, 61 to 92. I'd note that in 2009-10, the year that the transition occurred at Davis, there was essentially a 1-year spike in food service costs. My calculations were between 14 and 17% across the meal plans. In other years...
and that transition was from...
University employment, moving the employees to university employment.
Thank you.
Right.
Benefits.
So that helps compare what happened at Davis to the chart that you have there behind you. Elsewhere in the meal plans over that period, a rough approximation is, in the neighborhood of 4 to 7.5% across different plans generally.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. Right. And with respect to CSU, would you like it just for the 6 campuses that are contracting out, just to see, or is that a possibility, Mr. Roberts? Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Vice Chair? All right. I think those are the questions we have this morning. Thank you very much for your comments and testimony. We do have time for limited public testimony. If there's any member of the public who wishes to speak, you can come forward now to the microphone at the end of the dais, and we'll take any public comment. Okay, doesn't look like we have anyone who wants to speak. So with that, thank you all, and we are adjourned.